Good night, everyone doing tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Michelle Spirits. If I give you a little short news and a word on tonight, but we're going to start with a New Orleans woman had made a discovery finding a body of a missing man behind her home. Now, New Orleans, a man had been reported missing by his family nearly a month ago. Was found dead from a gunshot wound in the New Orleans East. Now his name was Rondon. Body was discovered along Burke Road at Bunker Hill area on New Year Day. This happened New Year Day. But one of the neighbors had said she was lying in her bed when she heard noise, a loud noise, from a crash. That's what she said sounded like from a crash. When she went outside, she saw a car had crashed, you know, into the garage behind her home. The woman home who discovered the body. So the loud sound made her come outside. So So I'm also a spiritual divine. Now what I did saw him wrestling with someone. I couldn't get her or his face, but I got his face. Now he was wrestling with her, and it was like he trying to hold the gun and holding her hand at the same time. So he was trying to stop um whoever was trying to harm him. So uh, he was trying his best to hold the hand from trying to shoot him, and the person still did it, and the neighbor heard the loud sound. And what I'm gonna do tonight, I'm gonna meditate on it again, so I can see the whole event happen. See, most likely we'll try to see the person's face and see what a person buried his body, but she did found her behind her home. And at the same day, New Year's Day, the neighbor heard a loud sound. So I will meditate on that again tonight. But he was wrestling and trying to save his life. And I do have a word on tonight. Now Jesus in miraculous catching fish, to the net. To the net was overflowing with fish, but the net did not break. So John, chapter 21, verse through 14. So Jesus had returned after 3 days of resurrection. Him and Peter. Peter denied him and everything, but Peter still was his disciple. So he saw half his disciple and the rest of the half was fishing. So he went to go meet them and let them know, okay, y'all, I'm here. I told y'all I'm going to roll back after 3 days. Jesus had returned after 3 days, resurrection. Now, Jesus about to appear to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. So Simon Peter, Thomas and two other disciples was together. So now before Jesus' death, Peter denied him 3 times. So uh, Jesus about to reveal himself, to Peter and other disciples. So afterwards Jesus had appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened in this way. So Jesus had made an appearance to the group of the disciples, and Peter is one of the 7 disciples in a group who would go out fishing. Because you remember when Jesus first met him, when he first met Peter, Peter and his brother was fishing, and he made both of them. He said, "Y'all want to be my disciples? Come on, follow me." So Jesus really loved Peter. Because Peter was the first one that Jesus had discovered, had found. And at the end of his days, Peter had denied him 3 times, somebody he loved. So afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples, he said gonna happen in this way. So Jesus had made appearance to the group of disciples, and Peter is one of the 7 disciples. Because Peter was the first one, the first disciples that Jesus had saw. So Simon Peter and Thomas, they was in Galilee, and the disciples was together. See, they all was together in this boat. They all was together. So when Jesus had spoke to several women shortly after his resurrection, to Mary, that he passed along instruction, meant for the disciples they should meet him in Galilee. So that's why they was going towards that way, and in waiting on Jesus to come, they decided to go fishing. So I'm going out to fish. Simon Peter had told them, and they had said, we will go with you. So Peter was the first one. He already a fisherman. He decided he want to go fishing while they waiting on Jesus. So the rest of the group had said, okay, we're gonna follow you. So they had went out. They got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. That night you caught nothing. Prior to being called by Christ, many of the disciples, were fishermen. Now, after his resurrection, Jesus had told the men to meet him at their home region of Galilee. So Peter, he once again had took charge and planned to resume fishing and caught nothing. He was not they professional in fishing, but they ain't caught nothing. Now early in the morning, now Jesus had stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. They didn't realize that it was Jesus, because they didn't realize he rolled back after 3 days. Now he told them, I guess they didn't believe him. But the ladies, they relieve him, because they was the first one there. The first one there. So the disciple knew not, that it was Jesus, but though he was so near them, they could hear. They can hear, but they couldn't see him. Now, what he had said is not daylight, and they could not distinguish concerning that, but their eyes might be, hell that they had not know him. So they couldn't see him. They couldn't see him. But they can recognize his verse. Now he called out to them, friends, haven't you caught any fish? They said no. They answered. So they had stated no. They caught nothing. Just enough to make breakfast. And that's how some of us. I'm talking to myself too. Sometimes we can have just enough to get by. And God really don't want us to just have just enough to get by. That's struggling. So they caught just enough to fix them some breakfast. And that was it. To make breakfast a meal early in the morning. So there is always indeed enough in Christ. And he has a heart to give it. But either through feeding on something else, if they don't ask him for food, he will not suffer them to starve. Now since they had caught nothing, and Jesus feel like, look, that's my disciples. I don't want them to starve. All they had was enough to fix them some breakfast. So Jesus gonna give them a hand of help. But all he gonna do is speak words. And that speaking of words is enough to have them to have more fish than enough. So they're gonna be going from nothing to more than enough. So now he will ask them whether they have any. Will kindly invite them to the provision of him himself. Because he about to reveal himself. So they welcome him and bless them. So he had said, so Jesus, now they still don't know who this is, but they can recognize his verse. So he said, throw your net on the right hand side. Because see, they kept throwing on the left hand side, and they couldn't catch nothing. So he said, throw it on the right hand side of the boat, and you will find something. And when they did, they was unable to hold the net, you know, be, because of the large number of fish. Now you took Jesus to tell you, dude, let's do this another way. Okay, y'all kept on fishing all night on the left hand side. Okay, let's try this on the right hand side. So they went from nothing to more than enough. They had so much fish, it was hard for them to carry that net up on the boat. But guess what? All the fish they had caught, the net did not break. You know, all that I went through, I did not break. You know, and so they went from nothing all night long, could not catch nothing. Went from nothing to more enough. And sometimes that's how it be. Sometimes you can be for years struggling, and then sometimes God will just speak that word. Jesus just spoke that word, and have your net overflowing with fish when you couldn't catch none at first. You just were struggling all of a sudden. And then now you're not struggling no more. You have more than enough. More than enough that the net did not break. So the disciple knew not that it was Jesus, but though he was so near them, they can hear him or what he said, but it's not daylight, and they could not discern concern him or his eyes. He was held back, and they still couldn't. They recognized his voice, but they couldn't hardly see him. So they throw their net on the right hand side. Jesus said, throw your net on the right hand side of the boat and you will find some. Now Jesus said, you're going to find some if you put it on this side here. Okay, all night long you kept putting it on the left hand side. We're going to try the right hand side, and for surely you will find something. Sure enough, they found some. And when they did, they were unable to pull their net up on their boat. It was just so much fish. And that's how God is. God will have your cup overflowing. The net was just overflowing with fish. It needed all of them to help pull that net up on the boat. So when they did, they was unable to hold their net. The large number of fish. And all the large number of fish, the net did not break. So they caught nothing. But Jesus said throw the net on the other side, and the Son of Man glorified. But God gets the glorified. So when Jesus had told them another way, because sometimes we have to do things another. I was just telling somebody that I don't go, a lot of time we always do things the same. I'm talking to myself too. We always may want to do things the same way all the time. And sometimes you don't get nowhere, but we still want to do it that way. They couldn't catch nothing all night long, but they kept it on the left-hand side. And sometimes we got to change things up sometimes. Jesus said, we're going to change this up. We're going to throw it on the right-hand side. And for surely you're going to catch some fish on that right-hand side. And sure enough, they did. So when Jesus had told them another way, throw it on the right-hand side, they obeyed Jesus. Even though they couldn't hardly see his face, but guess what? They still obey him. And they soon found their net close to breaking because of all the fish they caught. A miracle that nobody but Jesus could perform. And that's how they're gonna know it's Jesus. Because see, because when Jesus was on earth, he was feeding 5,000 people with 2 fish. And then now the fish is overflowing, but the net did not break. So then the disciples, whom Jesus loved, said to Peter, it is the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his garment around him, for he had taken it off and jumped into the water. Now you remember, he denied Jesus 3 times. So when his brother had said, it sounds like Jesus, this is opportunity to make up to Jesus. This is opportunity to ask Jesus, forgive me. He dived in that water for forgiveness. because he denied Jesus and knowing that he loved Jesus. And now to see Jesus back, you know, when he realized he realized he wasn't going to come back, but then he see Jesus back. He wants to prove himself, and then after the forgiving, Peter gonna be a well disciples. He gonna be Jesus' rock. He gonna be the best disciples ever, because he gonna try to prove everything to Jesus. Make up the time that he denied him 3 times. So then the disciple who Jesus loved, not only John, the disciples who Jesus loved recognized Jesus in a dim morning light. He was the only one recognized. And see, that's when he said something. That's when Peter jumped up in that water. So he recognized Jesus in the dim morning light, undoubtable, because Jesus had performed similar miracle earlier. Jesus had performed that earlier. So when he saw how they had all that fish came on that net, large fish, they needed all them to help told that net on that boat, he know it was nobody but Jesus. So the other disciple had followed him in a boat and towed the net full of fish, for they was not far from shore, about 100 yards away. So the other disciples had came in a little fishing boat, dragging the net with fishes, probably because it was too heavy to be lifted up into the boat. Not all night long, they couldn't catch nothing. So now they got a net that's overflowing with fish. It takes all of them in a group to help tote that net, off the boat. So that was amazing. That was amazing. You can start from nothing and end up with plenty. You know, they started out with nothing, couldn't catch nothing at all until now the net is overflowing with fish. When it does, they couldn't catch nothing. And Jesus didn't want them to stop, because see, Jesus asked them, "Did you caught anything?" They said no. So Jesus didn't want them to stall. All they did was caught enough to fix them some breakfast. And then what's after that? So Jesus wasn't going to let them stall. Jesus came to the rescue. He said, okay, what's this on the right hand side this time? So the other disciples came in a little fishing boat, dragging a net with fishes, probably because it was too heavy to be lifted up into the boat. So when they landed, they saw a fire of burning coal there with a fish on it, and some bread. So Jesus had predicted how Peter would die. So now Jesus and Peter in the same room now. And so Jesus, he predicted Peter's death. The Jesus had predicted how Peter would die, by crucifixion. Coals of fire, is for the pain, affliction, meaning by feeding your hungry enemy and giving him to drink. Now you will remove a serious affliction from his head. Peter obeyed. Now Jesus said, okay, I'll predict your death. But the way we can solve this here, a serious affliction, excuse me, remove a serious affliction from his head. Now Jesus said to them, he said, bring some of the fish that you have just caught. Now remember, John was the only one can see him, had saw him. Nobody else, all they did was recognize his verse. So Simon Peter had climbed back into the boat. Remember, he dived on the boat to go see Jesus. So he climbed back in the boat, dragging the net offshore. It was full of large fish. It was 153 fish. Even with so many, the net was not torn. 153 fishes on that net, and it still didn't turn. Now despite a fruitless night, they obeyed, and the net immediately was overflowing with fish. Now this confirms that the man on the shore is Jesus. That as the disciples eat meat, Christ had presses Peter to reconfirm his faith. So there was 153 fishes. The net did not break. So now there was fishing all night long. And it took Jesus to come along and tell them, we about to do this another way. And sometimes that's how we is. Or sometimes we be comfortable of doing things a certain way. You know, and doing things a certain way. And Jesus said, we got to change this up. Just put this on the right hand side. We about to change this up. So God had made sure. Now because they caught nothing but throw on the other side and caught 153 fishes was a miracle from God. God made sure they had enough, where their net did not break. Now sometimes we can get comfortable of doing things one way. But their way, they caught nothing. But once they obeyed Jesus, their net was overflowing with fish and it did not break. And sometimes, like I said, we can do things the same way. Same way. And seeing we don't get no results. Talk about myself too, and don't get no results, but we still like to do things the same way. Like to do things a certain way. And so Jesus has said, obey me, and I for surely you will have so much. You will have so much because Jesus said certainly you will catch some. It should put it this way. And so despite all the fruitless night, they obeyed and the net is immediately overflowing with fish. Now this confirms that the man on the shore is Jesus. Now as the disciples had eaten meal with Christ, he presses Peter to rectify his faith. 153 fishes, the net did not break. So now they was fishing all night long and couldn't catch nothing. Your net on the right hand side obeyed Jesus because they caught nothing but throw on the right hand side and caught so many. So God made sure they had enough food to eat. Remember that they barely had anything. Barely had anything. And so their net did not break. Now sometimes we can get comfortable of doing things one way, but their way, our way, caught nothing. When we do it, that's why they always say don't lean on your own understanding. Don't do things in your way, because it will not work. Did we see how they was doing it on their own? And they could not catch nothing all night long until they came and obeyed Jesus, and then they caught plenty. So that's why God always said, don't try to do things on your own because it will never work out. Peter was all night long, could not catch a fish, could not catch fishes. Until what? The man of God said, put it on another side. And their fish just start overflowing. 153 fishes just start overflowing. So sometimes we'll get comfortable. So overflowing with fish and it did not break. That was called power. So Jesus had said to them, come and have breakfast. So some of the disciples still like, I don't think it's him. I don't know if that's him or not, but I'm not gonna ask. You gonna ask him? They was scared to ask Jesus, are you Jesus? They was talking and mumbling among themselves. So Jesus had said to them, he said, come and have breakfast. He said, none of the disciples dare to ask him, who are you? They dare to ask him. I got to somebody say, yo, come on in here, I'm fixing y'all some breakfast. But they did not ask him if he is Jesus. So all the miracles Jesus did and passed, and they still asking if he's Jesus in doubt. Now all the miracles that Jesus just did, they're still asking if he's Jesus. What you ask? And like, no, what you ask? They were scared to ask if that was Jesus after he did a miracle. And they still want to know, is that him? So there's no need, There is no need to ask since it is clear. So men believe this is Jesus, but they tempted to ask. Did not want to ask, not just to be sure, but they gone in to eat breakfast. They don't know who that is. Nobody don't want to ask is that Jesus or not. But somebody say, I'm gonna cook for you. You gonna follow. You rather follow, and you don't know who it is. You rather follow. You don't know who feeding you. Excuse me. So they're scared to ask who he is, but they ain't scared to eat from him. So Jesus distributed both bread and fish to his disciples, a spiritual sense that he provided plentiful, for his people. Now this was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples now after he was raised from the dead. So Jesus showed himself to the disciples after that he was raised, from the dead by the mouth of 2 and 3 witnesses. So their principal appearance of Christ to his disciples had resurrection from the dead was confirmed. He needed to get to the disciples because they had to be his witness. They had to be his witness that he resurrected from 3 days from the dead, and so he had to go around his disciples because the disciples had to see him, and they had to confirm, that he did, so that's all the word and news I have for you today. And we talk about this missing. This he was missing, but then they had found his body behind this woman house, And I'm also a Mrs. Divine, and when I pull up and saw, he was wrestling with someone trying to stop, the person from shooting him, and holding the other hand to stop, swing on whatever the case is. It went out on me, so I will have to meditate tonight and try to find him again and find out the full story of what went on. So that's all the news and what I have for today. Y'all have a blessed and safe day, and I see y'all in the next video.